Who was the best survivor among the early humans, the male early human or the female early human? Please let us know in the comments where you are watching this history video and what time you are watching it. And be sure to subscribe to our channel for more history videos in the future. Let your mind settle now, gently, into a time so distant that the stars above us were almost the same, yet the world beneath our feet felt utterly different. Drift back with me without hurry to the warm grasslands and scattered woodlands of Africa some 300,000 years ago. The air carries the faint scent of dry earth after rain, and the sun rises slowly over rolling hills dotted with acacia trees whose shadows stretch long in the early light. In this vast, open landscape, small groups of early humans moved quietly from waterhole to waterhole, their bare feet leaving soft prints in the red soil. These were our direct ancestors, the first people whose bodies and minds were shaped much like ours, and every single day they faced the quiet, patient task of staying alive. Picture them now, these early humans, moving in bands of perhaps 20 or 30 souls. There were no walls, no stores of grain, no maps to guide them. Survival depended entirely on what their eyes could see, what their hands could gather, and the knowledge passed softly from one generation to the next around the flickering light of a small fire. The days were long and the nights deeper than any we know today, filled with the distant calls of lions and the rustle of wind through tall grass. In this world, every member of the group mattered, yet each carried different strengths shaped by the slow hand of time and necessity. And so the gentle question arises, like a whisper carried on the evening breeze. In this endless story of endurance, who truly proved the better survivor, the male early human or the female early human? There is no sudden answer waiting here, no dramatic declaration that one stood above the other. Instead, let us simply walk beside them, observing without judgment, letting the quiet patterns of their lives unfold like the slow turning of seasons. For survival in those ancient days was never a contest. It was a shared rhythm, a careful balance of risk and care, strength and patience, that allowed the whole group to keep moving forward through drought and plenty alike. Yet as we drift deeper into their world, we begin to notice how the bodies and lives of males and females had been gently sculpted by countless generations to meet different yet perfectly complementary demands. Begin with the males, if you will, and let your thoughts rest on their sturdy frames. The average male of that time stood perhaps 5 feet 6 or 7 inches tall, with broader shoulders and thicker bones than many people today. Their muscles, built from years of walking vast distances and occasional bursts of intense effort, allowed them to carry heavy loads of meat back to camp or to hurl a sharpened wooden spear with surprising force. In the cool hours just before dawn, you might see small parties of these males slipping away from the main group, their bodies painted lightly with red ochre for camouflage, moving silently toward a herd of grazing antelope or wildebeest. Hunting large animals was dangerous work. A single misstep could mean a broken leg or a deep gash from a horn or tusk. Yet when the hunt succeeded, the reward was enormous, thousands of calories in one great feast that could feed everyone for days. The males who returned with such prizes earned quiet respect around the fire, and their skills in tracking, in reading the wind, in knowing exactly when to strike, became part of the group's living memory. But notice too how their lives were shaped by risk. Many males did not reach the age of 35. The same strength that let them chase game across open plains also exposed them to injury and sudden death. A twisted ankle far from water, a spear that glanced off bone instead of finding its mark, an encounter with a predator defending its own kill, these were everyday possibilities. And so the male early human became, over time, a specialist in moments of high effort and calculated danger. His body stored less fat and more muscle, his heart and lungs adapted to short, powerful surges rather than long, steady endurance. In the quiet evenings after the meat was shared and the stories told in low voices, the males often rested deeply, their bodies repairing themselves for the next hunt. Their contribution to survival was real and vital. Without the protein and fat from successful hunts, the group would have weakened, especially in times when roots and berries grew scarce. Now let your attention drift softly toward the females of these same bands. Their bodies told a different story, one written just as carefully by the long demands of life. On average slightly shorter than the males, with wider hips and a greater capacity to store fat in the hips and thighs, the female early human was shaped for endurance and for the profound work of bringing new life into the world. Childbirth in those days was never easy. The narrow birth canal of early humans combined with larger infant heads meant hours of effort and real danger. Yet females survived these ordeals again and again, often carrying one child while another clung to their back or walked beside them. Their bodies knew how to draw on stored reserves during pregnancy and nursing, turning the unpredictable supply of food into steady milk for the young. This ability to endure long periods of scarcity without collapsing was one of the quiet miracles of their physiology. During the long daylight hours, while some males ranged far in search of large game, the females usually stayed closer to the heart of the group, moving in small parties with the children and the elders. Their hands were skilled at finding the reliable foods that kept everyone alive day after day. Nutritious tubers dug from the earth with sharpened sticks, sweet berries plucked at just the right ripeness, nuts cracked between stones, and edible leaves and insects that many overlook today. These gathering expeditions were not dramatic, yet they provided the steady backbone of the diet, often 70% or more of the calories the group consumed. The knowledge required was immense and passed quietly from mother to daughter, from aunt to niece. Which plants could be eaten raw, which needed pounding or soaking to remove bitterness, where the best waterholes lay hidden in the dry season, and how to read the sky for coming rain. A female who knew these things well could keep her children and the entire band fed even when the hunters returned empty-handed. And there was more. The females were the steady center of the social world. Around them gathered the young ones learning to walk, the older children learning which routes to choose, and the grandmothers whose eyes had seen many seasons and whose memories held the stories of past droughts. In the late afternoons, when the group rested in the shade, the females wove simple carrying baskets from reeds or softened animal hides into slings for infants. Their voices, low and calm, comforted the sick and soothed the fearful. Studies of modern hunter-gatherer groups that still live in similar ways suggest that the social bonds maintained largely by females helped the entire band survive crises. When one hunter was lost, the web of care remained intact. Females often lived longer than males, sometimes into their late 40s or early 50s, becoming the living libraries of knowledge that guided the group through hard times. So already, even in these first gentle observations, we see that survival was never about one sex outlasting the other. It was about two different kinds of endurance working together like the two hands of the same body. The male early human offered strength for the high-risk moments that could bring sudden abundance. The female early human offered patience, reliability, and the literal continuation of the group through childbirth and daily care. Neither could have succeeded for long without the other. Yet the question lingers softly in the warm African air. If we look deeper, if we follow them through season after season, through the great migrations and the long nights, might one quiet advantage begin to reveal itself. Let us continue walking with them now, letting the days unfold without haste. Imagine a dry season that stretches on and on. The rivers shrink to thin silver threads, the herds move far away. The males range wider and wider, sometimes gone for 3 or 4 days at a time, returning with nothing but exhaustion and perhaps a few small birds or lizards. In such times the females become the quiet lifeline. Their knowledge of drought-resistant tubers, of hidden springs marked by certain trees, of how to stretch a handful of mongongo nuts into a meal for many, keeps the children from wasting away. Their bodies, with their greater fat reserves, can afford to nurse an infant even when food is scarce. The males, leaner and more muscular, feel the hunger more sharply and must conserve energy for the next possible hunt. In these prolonged dry periods, the steady, patient work of the females often decides whether the band survives until the rains return. Yet when the rains do come and the grass springs green again, the herds return in great numbers. Then the males step forward once more. Their tracking skills, sharpened by years of reading broken twigs and faint hoofprints, allow the group to follow the migrating animals. A single successful hunt of a large antelope or even a giraffe can provide enough meat to dry and store for weeks. The males who return triumphant carry not only food but renewed hope, and the entire group shares in the feast around the fire, singing low songs of thanks. In these moments of plenty, the balance feels perfect again. Drift now into the evenings when the group gathers. The fire crackles softly, casting warm light on faces marked by wind and sun. The children lean against their mothers, listening to stories told in the same calm, unhurried voices we are using now. The males repair spear shafts and stone tools, their strong hands working steadily. The females mend carrying slings and sort the day's gathered foods, their movements gentle and practiced. In these shared hours, knowledge flows both ways. A male might teach a young boy how to nap a hand axe just so, while a female shows a girl which leaves ease the pain of a thorn scratch. No one keeps score. Survival belongs to everyone. As the fire burns lower and the stars wheel overhead, let your thoughts rest on the very young and the very old. Here again the different roles become quietly visible. Infants were carried almost constantly by their mothers or older sisters for the first several years, their survival depending on the female's milk and constant presence. Weaning happened gradually around 3 or 4 years of age, and during that time the mother's ability to find extra calories mattered enormously. Meanwhile, older males who could no longer hunt as far often stayed near camp, teaching the young or fashioning tools, their experience still valuable. Older females, however, frequently lived long enough to become grandmothers, and their presence brought a special kind of security. They could watch the toddlers while mothers gathered, freeing younger women to travel farther. They remembered which plants had saved the group during the last great drought 30 years earlier. In many bands, the survival of the whole group improved noticeably when experienced females lived past the age of 40. And so the years pass, one slow season after another. The band moves north or south following the rains, sometimes splitting into smaller groups when resources thin, sometimes joining other bands at waterholes to trade stories and perhaps mates. Through it all, the question of who survived best remains not a competition, but a living conversation written in the bodies and choices of every individual. Some males lived long and fathered many children because they were especially skilled trackers. Some females lived long and saw their grandchildren thrive because they knew the land like the lines on their own hands. Both kinds of survival mattered. Both kept the fragile thread of humanity from breaking. Yet as we prepare to rest here for a moment, letting the ancient African night settle around us, we have only begun to explore the deeper layers. For the true story of survival stretches far beyond single lifetimes and single bands. It reaches into the very ways males and females adapted their minds, their social strategies, and their bodies over thousands of generations. It touches the great migrations out of Africa, the ice ages that followed, and the quiet revolution of language and care that bound groups together more tightly than any spear or digging stick ever could. The male early human and the female early human each carried pieces of a puzzle that only together made the picture whole. And perhaps in the gentlest possible way, that shared wholeness is the real answer we are drifting toward. The fire has burned low now. The children breathe softly in sleep. The night creatures call in the distance, but the band is safe within its circle of trust. Let your own breathing slow to match the quiet rhythm of this ancient world. We have walked only through the first gentle layers of their days and their different strengths. There's so much more to discover, so many more seasons to follow, so many more quiet revelations waiting in the long story of who endured and how. When you are ready, when the next evening comes and the fire is lit once more, we will continue together, stepping deeper into the lives of these early humans, letting the wind carry us forward through time and through the patient balance that allowed our species to survive against every odds. The fire has burned low now. The children breathe softly in sleep. The night creatures call in the distance, but the band is safe within its circle of trust. Let your own breathing slow to match the quiet rhythm of this ancient world. We have walked only through the first gentle layers of their days and their different strengths. There is so much more to discover, so many more seasons to follow, so many more quiet revelations waiting in the long story of who endured and how. When you are ready, when the next evening comes and the fire is lit once more, we will continue together, stepping deeper into the lives of these early humans, letting the wind carry us forward through time and through the patient balance that allowed our species to survive against every odds. For now, simply rest. The grasslands breathe with you. The stars keep their ancient watch. And the question of the best survivor, male or female, remains open, peaceful, and full of wonder, just as it has for 300,000 years. Now let the night pass softly, like sand slipping through open fingers. Dawn arrives without announcement, pale light filtering through the thin leaves of fever trees. The band stirs slowly. Mothers lift sleeping infants to their chests, adjusting soft slings made of antelope hide. Fathers check the points of their wooden spears, running a thumb along edges worn smooth by use. Everyone moves with the same unhurried certainty born of countless mornings like this one. Today we will follow them farther than yesterday, letting the landscape itself begin to show us how deeply the differences between male and female were woven into the very geography of survival. As the group sets out, notice how the paths naturally divide for a time. The males, lighter on their feet when unburdened by young children, often fan out ahead or to the sides, eyes scanning the horizon for the dust clouds that signal moving herds. Their strides are longer, their posture alert yet relaxed, trained by years of reading the land for signs invisible to the untrained eye. A freshly snapped branch, a patch of flattened grass, the faint musk left on a termite mound by passing zebra. They carry little except their weapons and a small pouch of ochre or charcoal for marking trails. This freedom to range widely was both gift and burden. It allowed them to locate distant water or fresh grazing grounds long before the main group arrived, yet it also meant they sometimes returned after dark, empty-handed and weary, having spent their energy on nothing more than miles of empty plain. Meanwhile, the females walk at the center of the moving band, surrounded by the soft sounds of small feet and small voices. Infants ride high on their backs or hips, tiny hands clutching at braided hair or the edge of a carrying cloth. Toddlers stumble alongside, learning balance on uneven ground, while older girls stay close, already mimicking the steady swing of their mothers digging sticks. The pace is measured, never rushed. Every few hundred paces, the women pause to scan the ground or the low bushes, fingers brushing over leaves, testing the give of soil beneath a heel. Here grows a stand of wild yams whose tubers lie just below the surface. They're a cluster of sour plum trees heavy with fruit that will keep for days if wrapped carefully in leaves. Each discovery is quiet, almost private, yet shared instantly with a soft word or a pointed finger. The children watch and learn without being told. This is the classroom of survival, conducted in whispers and gestures rather than loud instruction. Let your mind linger on one such gathering party now. 5 or 6 adult females move together in loose formation, children scattered among them like young birds around a nest. One woman, perhaps in her late 20s, kneels beside a low mound and begins to dig with a sharpened branch. Earth is dry and hard, yet she works methodically, loosening soil in small circles until her fingers close around the rough skin of a tuber the size of a large sweet potato. She brushes it clean, breaks it open to check for rot, then nods once. The others continue searching nearby, each following her own inner map of the landscape. By mid-morning they have gathered enough roots, greens, and a handful of protein-rich termites to feed the entire band for the day, even if the hunters find nothing. There is no celebration, only the calm satisfaction of certainty. They sit briefly in the shade of an acacia, cracking nuts between stones, sharing small pieces with the children, wiping sticky juice from tiny chins. The rhythm is unbroken, soothing in its repetition. Contrast this scene, if you will, with the males who have moved farther out. 3 of them crouch low behind a termite-riddled log, watching a small group of impala grazing 50 paces away. The lead hunter, older with faint scars across one forearm from some long-ago encounter, studies the wind direction, the position of the sun, the slight limp in the nearest animal's hind leg. He signals with the smallest tilt of his head. The others understand instantly. One circles wide to the left, staying downwind, another readies a throwing stick weighted at one end. The moment arrives without warning. A quick rise, a smooth release, and the impala staggers. The hunters close in fast, finishing the kill with spears before the animal can bolt. Blood stains the grass. They work quickly now, gutting and skinning with stone blades, dividing the carcass into portions that can be carried. The liver and heart go first, eaten raw on the spot for quick energy. The rest is bound with vines and slung over shoulders. The return journey will take hours, the weight pressing into muscle already tired from the stalk. Success today means full bellies and stronger children tomorrow. Failure would have meant only sore feet and another day of waiting. Both scenes are ordinary, both are essential. Yet notice how the female gathering is almost invisible in its reliability. It happens every day in good seasons and bad, producing a steady trickle of calories that rarely fails. The male hunt, by contrast, is feast or famine. When it succeeds, the surplus is dramatic, allowing the group to rest, repair tools, tend the sick, even share with neighboring bands. When it fails, which it often does, the group leans quietly on what the females have brought in. Over the course of a year, researchers who have studied modern forager societies living in comparable environments estimate that gathered foods, plants, small animals, honey, insects supply between 60 and 80% of the total caloric intake. Meat, though richer in protein and fat, is episodic. This division of labor was not arbitrary. It emerged from the slow sculpting of natural selection acting on bodies that had to reproduce while staying alive. Let us rest here for a moment beside the gathering women. The sun is climbing higher, warming the earth. A light breeze moves through the grass, carrying the distant scent of smoke from last night's fire. One of the females lifts her infant to nurse, rocking gently as she chews on a strip of dried meat saved from yesterday. Her body has stored just enough fat to sustain this act even when food was scarce last month. That small reserve, carried in the hips and thighs and breasts, represents one of the most powerful survival advantages any early human possessed. During pregnancy and lactation, a female's energy needs rise sharply. Without the ability to draw on stored fat, many infants would have perished in lean times. Males with less fat and higher muscle mass burn through calories faster during activity and recover more slowly from hunger. In prolonged scarcity, the leaner male body reaches a critical point sooner. The female body, by design, endures longer on less, yet endurance alone does not tell the whole story. The male's specialization in high-risk, high-reward activity carried its own long-term value. A single large kill could provide fats and proteins impossible to obtain from plants alone. These nutrients were especially critical for growing brains. The children who survived to adulthood carried larger, more complex brains than their earlier ancestors, brains that demanded constant high-quality fuel. Meat, marrow, and organ meats supplied that fuel in concentrated form. Without periodic access to these resources, brain growth might have stalled. So the male's willingness to face danger, to run until lungs burned, to stand against predators many times their size, fed the very minds that would one day invent language, art, and complex social rules. Drift now with the band as it reunites in the late afternoon. The hunters return, sweat-streaked and breathing hard, carrying the quartered impala. The gathered foods are already laid out on flat stones, roots roasted in the ashes of a small fire, handfuls of berries, cracked nuts, roasted termites wrapped in leaves. The meat is added to the pile. Everyone eats slowly, sharing without hurry. A grandmother tears small pieces of liver and places them in the mouths of the youngest children. A young male, still flushed from the chase, laughs quietly as he shows his son how to scrape marrow from a cracked bone. The females sort the remaining plants, setting aside what can be carried for tomorrow. No one speaks of whose contribution was greater. The food is simply there and the group is stronger for it. As evening settles once more, let your thoughts move outward beyond this single band. Across the ancient savanna, hundreds of other groups lived in much the same way. Some bands lost males to injury or predators more often than others. Some lost females to childbirth or illness. Yet the ones that persisted longest were those in which neither role collapsed entirely. A band without skilled hunters might survive on gathered foods for years, but its children would grow more slowly, its immune systems weaker. A band without reliable gatherers would feast sporadically but starve between hunts. The most resilient groups maintain both streams of resources, both kinds of knowledge, both kinds of bodies working in quiet harmony. And so the question softens further. It is not really about who was best in any absolute sense. It is about how two different survival strategies, shaped by the same harsh world, interlocked so perfectly that the whole became far greater than either part. The male early human and the female early human were not rivals. They were partners in the longest, quietest relay race in the history of life on Earth. The sky darkens to deep indigo. The fire is fed again, small flames licking upward. Somewhere far off a hyena laughs, but the sound is distant, harmless. Let your own body grow heavy now, sinking into the soft earth of memory. We have followed them through another full turning of the day, watched how their differences served not division but unity. There are still deeper currents to explore, how these patterns shifted as the climate cooled, as the band grew larger, as language began to weave tighter nets of cooperation, as the first long journeys carried them out of Africa into new and colder worlds. Those stories wait patiently for the next quiet hour. The sky darkens to deep indigo. The fire is fed again, small flames licking upward. Somewhere far off a hyena laughs, but the sound is distant, harmless. Let your own body grow heavy now, sinking into the soft earth of memory. We have followed them through another full turning of the day, watched how their differences served not division but unity. There are still deeper currents to explore, how these patterns shifted as the climate cooled, as the band grew larger, as language began to weave tighter nets of cooperation, as the first long journeys carried them out of Africa into new and colder worlds. Those stories wait patiently for the next quiet hour. For now rest, the night is kind, the ancient balance holds steady, and the gentle truth continues to unfold one slow breath at a time. Now let another dawn arrive, soft and silver gray this time, because the seasons have turned many hundreds of times since the last fire we watched together. The place is no longer only the open grasslands of eastern Africa. The world has grown colder. The air carries a sharper edge. Grasses have given way in many places to tougher shrubs, and farther north the forests have thinned into parklands where scattered trees stand like quiet sentinels against horizons that stretch longer than memory. Some of the bands have followed game trails northward, southward, eastward, crossing narrow land bridges when sea levels fell, moving so gradually that no single lifetime noticed the full change. Yet over tens of thousands of years, the landscape itself has become a new teacher, pressing different lessons onto male and female bodies alike. Settle your thoughts now beside one such migrating group, perhaps 35 or 40 people strong, walking along the edge of a wide river valley. The water runs slow and green here, bordered by tall reeds that whisper in the constant wind. The males walk in a loose front rank, scanning the far bank for movement, spears held loosely but ready. Their shoulders carry light burdens today, only water gourds, a few stone cores for making fresh tools, small packets of dried meat wrapped in leaves. They have learned that carrying too much slows the stride when danger appears suddenly. Behind them, the females form the steady heart of the column. Each carries more, a sleeping infant cradled in one arm, a digging stick tucked under the other, baskets or hide slings filled with the last of the previous day's gathering, dried roots, smoked fish from the river traps, handfuls of shelled nuts that travel well. Toddlers and older children weave in and out, sometimes running ahead to pick up bright pebbles, sometimes falling back to be lifted onto a hip or shoulder. The pace remains measured. No one hurries the children. Hurry wastes energy, and energy is the currency of long-distance travel. As the day unfolds without haste, let us notice how the new environments begin to test the old divisions of labor in fresh ways. In these cooler, more seasonal lands, the herds no longer move in endless circles tied to rainfall alone. Instead, they follow ancient migration corridors that stretch for hundreds of miles, north in summer, south in winter, driven by the push and pull of snow lines and fresh pasture. The males, still the primary long-range hunters, now spend entire weeks away from the main group during peak migration seasons. They track caribou or bison across open steppes, sometimes joining temporary hunting parties from other bands to surround and drive animals into natural traps, narrow ravines, shallow river crossings, dead-end box canyons. These cooperative hunts are larger and more dangerous than the small stalking parties of the warmer savannas. A charging bull can trample 3 men before it falls. A misthrown spear can glance off thick winter hide and bury itself in a companion's leg. Yet when these hunts succeed, the return is transformative. Sledges made of lashed branches piled high with meat and hides, enough to feed the entire band for weeks and leave surplus to dry or smoke for the lean months ahead. The females, meanwhile, adapt their gathering to the stricter seasonality. In summer the land offers abundance, berries in thickets, roots swollen with moisture, fish running thick in shallows, but winter closes the pantry doors. They have learned to preserve what cannot be eaten at once, berries mashed and dried into cakes, roots slow roasted then packed in sand-lined pits, fish split and hung over smoky fires until they harden into leathery strips that keep for months. These stored foods become the quiet lifeline when deep snow covers the ground and the males cannot hunt far. A female who has prepared well can ration the winter cache so that even the youngest and oldest survive until spring thaws bring the first green shoots. Her body, still carrying more subcutaneous fat than the males, helps her endure the cold better during those months of reduced activity. She can sit closer to the fire, tending infants and small children, repairing clothing of sewn hides, twisting sinew into thread, all while drawing slowly on her own reserves without collapsing. Picture one such winter camp now, tucked against the lee side of a low ridge where the wind cannot cut so deeply. The shelters are simple, frames of young spruce lashed together, covered with overlapping hides weighted with stones and snow blocks for insulation. Inside each shelter the air is warmer, heavy with the smell of smoke, drying meat, and human bodies closed together. At the center of the largest shelter sits an older female, her hair streaked with gray, her hands never still. She is softening a fresh caribou hide by chewing the edges, working saliva into the fibers to make them pliable for sewing. Around her, the younger women listen as she speaks in low tones, recounting how her own mother once stretched a small winter store through a season when blizzards kept the hunters in camp for 28 days straight. The knowledge is not written. It lives in her voice, in the rhythm of her hands, in the way she pauses to let the younger ones repeat a stitch or a recipe back to her. Without these grandmothers and elder females, much of the accumulated wisdom of preservation, midwifery, plant lore, and child rearing would fade with each generation. Their long survival, often 10 or 15 years past the end of childbearing, becomes one of the quiet keys to the group's endurance across changing climates. The males, too, carry wisdom forward, though in different forms. In the same shelter, an older male sharpens flint blades against a soft stone, testing each edge against his thumb. Young boys sit close, watching the angle of his wrist, the pressure of his stroke. He speaks little, but when he does it is about wind direction on open plains, about how a herd's restlessness before a storm can be read in the flick of their ears, about the exact moment to release a spear so that momentum carries it deepest. These lessons are physical as much as verbal. He guides small hands to hold the striker just so, corrects the swing of a practice throw at a rolled-up hide. The knowledge of killing at a distance, of reading animal behavior across vast spaces, of cooperating in silence with other hunters, these skills keep the band supplied with the dense nutrition needed to fuel larger brains and longer childhoods. Let weeks pass in this winter camp. Snow falls and drifts against the shelters. The males attempt short hunts when the weather clears, returning sometimes with hares or ptarmigan, sometimes with nothing but frost-bitten fingers. The females ration carefully, boiling bones for marrow broth, mixing dried berry cakes with boiled roots to stretch flavor and nutrients. Children grow quieter as hunger tightens its grip, yet no one dies. The stored foods in the females' careful management see them through. When the first warm wind arrives and the snow begins to melt into rushing streams, the band emerges thinner but alive. The males lead them toward the summer ranges where new calves follow their mothers across greening valleys. The females carry the last of the winter cash, feeding the youngest until fresh greens appear. The cycle renews itself. As we drift forward through more centuries, notice how these patterns begin to leave traces in the bones themselves. Archaeologists who study ancient skeletons find patterns that whisper the same story we have been following. Male remains from this period often show more healed fractures in the arms, shoulders, and ribs, marks of close encounters with large animals or falls during chases. Female remains show fewer such injuries, but more signs of nutritional stress during certain years. Lines of arrested growth in tooth enamel, slight osteoporosis in older individuals from repeated pregnancies and lactations. Yet female skeletons also show greater longevity on average. More of them reach ages beyond 40, beyond 45, carrying with them the accumulated knowledge that cannot be replaced quickly. In some sites, the ratio of older females to older males is noticeably higher, suggesting that while males faced higher instantaneous risk, females faced a slower, steadier wear that their bodies were built to withstand longer. And still the migrations continue. Some groups cross into regions where winters last 6 months or more. Others move along coastlines where shellfish and sea mammals provide steadier protein than inland hunting alone. In these coastal bands, the division of labor shifts slightly yet meaningfully. Males often take to water in simple rafts or by wading with nets and harpoons, pursuing seals, sea lions, or schools of fish that come close to shore. The work is cold, wet, and occasionally deadly. A sudden wave can sweep a man away, hypothermia can set in within minutes, but the returns are rich in fat, the very fuel needed for brain growth and warmth in cold climates. Females, meanwhile, become masters of the intertidal zone, collecting clams, mussels, urchins, and seaweed at low tide, preserving what cannot be eaten fresh by drying or smoking. The rhythm remains familiar. Males pursue the high variance, high reward resources. Females secure the low variance, reliable base. Together they create a broader safety net than either could manage alone. Through every landscape, savanna, steppe, tundra edge, rocky shore, the same quiet partnership persists. The male early human becomes ever more specialized in pursuit, in risk, in the brief intense effort that can change everything in a single day. The female early human becomes ever more specialized in patience, in preparation, in the long, slow accumulation that keeps the group breathing through the empty months. Neither role is superior, neither is dispensable. The group that loses too many males finds itself short of sudden windfalls and the dense nutrients they bring. The group that loses too many females finds its steady foundation crumbling, its children hungrier, its knowledge leaking away with each elder who does not wake one morning. Let your mind rest now on a single evening in one of these later bands. The camp is pitched beside a frozen lake under a sky so clear the stars seem close enough to touch. The fire burns steady, fed with dry willow branches that crackle softly. Around the flames sit adults and children wrapped in layered furs. A young male, barely past his first beard, tells in halting words how he and 2 others stalked a musk ox for 3 days across wind-scoured ice, waiting for the moment its guard dropped. An older female across the fire adds her own quiet story, how she once found a cache of frozen berries preserved beneath snow from the previous autumn, enough to keep fevered children alive through a sickness that took 3 elders. Both tales are received with the same calm nods, the same low murmurs of appreciation. No one ranks them, both are threads in the same cloth. As the fire burns lower and sleep begins to claim the youngest first, let us acknowledge something gentle yet profound. The very question, who was the best survivor, starts to dissolve the longer we watch. Survival was never awarded to one sex or the other. It was woven through their collaboration, through the tension and harmony between risk and steadiness, between the sudden and the slow. The male early human and the female early human did not compete to outlast each other. They complemented each other so completely that the lineage endured ice ages, volcanic winters, megafauna extinctions, and the long empty stretches when no large game appeared at all. The night deepens, breath clouds in the cold air then fades, the lake ice groans faintly under its own weight. Somewhere in the darkness a wolf calls once, twice, then falls silent. The band sleeps close together, sharing warmth as they have shared everything else. We have followed them now through warmer plains and colder valleys, through seasons of plenty and seasons of want, watching how each role supported the other like roots and branches of the same ancient tree. There remains more to see. The story carries forward into times when tools become more refined, when social bonds stretch across wider distances, when the first signs of symbolic thought appear in ochre patterns and carved bone. Those chapters wait in the quiet dark ahead. For this evening let the fire die to embers. Let your own breathing match the slow rise and fall of the sleeping band. The balance holds. The question rests, soft and unanswered in the way that only the deepest truths can rest, peaceful, complete, and still unfolding. The night deepens, breath clouds in the cold air then fades. The lake ice groans faintly under its own weight. Somewhere in the darkness a wolf calls once, twice, then falls silent. The band sleeps close together, sharing warmth as they have shared everything else. We have followed them now through warmer plains and colder valleys, through seasons of plenty and seasons of want, watching how each role supported the other like roots and branches of the same ancient tree. There remains more to see. The story carries forward into times when tools become more refined, when social bonds stretch across wider distances, when the first signs of symbolic thought appear in ochre patterns and carved bone. Those chapters wait in the quiet dark ahead. For this evening let the fire die to embers. Let your own breathing match the slow rise and fall of the sleeping band. The balance holds. The question rests, soft and unanswered in the way that only the deepest truths can rest, peaceful, complete, and still unfolding. Rest now. The stars keep their silent count. The long night shelters you. And tomorrow, when another dawn finds us, we will walk a little farther together along this same patient path. Now let the seasons turn again, many hundreds more, so that the ice sheets have retreated farther north and the forests have crept back across once barren lands. The air feels softer, carrying the scent of pine and damp moss rather than the dry bite of steppe wind. The bands have grown slightly larger in some places, not because life has become easy, but because the steady accumulation of knowledge has allowed more infants to survive their first fragile years. Some groups settle for longer periods beside reliable rivers or lakes rich in fish and waterfowl. Others still follow the old migratory rhythms, but now with better tools, better clothing, better understanding of the plants that heal and the stones that cut cleanly. Settle your mind beside one of these more settled groups, perhaps 45 or 50 people living along the gently curving bank of a wide, slow river. The camp is semi-permanent. Dome-shaped huts framed with young willow and covered in layers of birch bark and reed mats, each structure large enough for an extended family to sleep shoulder to shoulder. Smoke rises in thin blue threads from several hearth fires. Children run between the huts, chasing one another with sticks fashioned into pretend spears. Adults move with the calm purpose of people who know exactly where the next meal will come from and how long it will last. In this new phase, the old division of labor has not vanished. It has deepened and become more intricate. The males still range farther when the season calls for it. Spring brings the annual salmon run, rivers turning silver with fish so thick a hand dipped in the current can come up grasping 2 or 3 at once. The men construct weirs of woven branches across shallow channels, stand waist-deep in the cold flow with long-handled dip nets or bone-barbed leasters, and harvest thousands of pounds of fish in a few weeks. They smoke what cannot be eaten fresh, hanging long rows of split salmon over alder fires until the flesh turns deep orange and the skin hardens like leather. These stores travel well and keep through the following winter, providing concentrated protein and fat when other foods dwindle. Later in the year, when deer move through the forests in small family groups, the males organize drives, quiet encirclements that funnel animals toward waiting archers armed with lighter, more accurate bows tipped with finely flaked stone points. The bows themselves represent generations of refinement, yew or Osage orange heartwood carefully seasoned, backed with sinew for extra snap, strings of twisted plant fiber or rawhide. A well-placed arrow can drop a deer at 30 paces, and the hunters work in silence, communicating only with hand signals and soft bird calls. Yet even these more sophisticated hunts remain high risk. A wounded buck can still gore a man before it falls. An arrow that misses its mark can alert an entire herd, sending them crashing away through thick underbrush. Males continue to bear the greater share of sudden, violent injury. Their skeletons from this period show an increasing number of healed forearm fractures, classic peri-fractures from deflecting antlers or tusks, and more embedded stone points in ribs and vertebrae, evidence of close-quarters struggles when spears or arrows were not enough. The mortality peak for males still clusters in the young adult years between 18 and 35, the window when strength is greatest and caution is least seasoned by experience. The females, meanwhile, have expanded their domain in ways that are less visible from a distance but no less vital. The riverbank and the surrounding forest floor have become an extended larder under their careful management. They know every bend where cattail roots grow thickest, every sunny clearing where wild strawberries ripen in June, every oak grove where acorns drop in autumn. They have learned to process those acorns, shelling, pounding, leaching the bitter tannins in running water for days, until the resulting meal can be baked on flat stones into nourishing cakes that store for months. They harvest hazelnuts by the basketful, crack them with river pebbles, and dry the kernels in the sun. They dig burdock and wapato tubers from the muddy shallows, roast them until sweet, and string them on cords to dry. In late summer, they gather rose hips after the first light frost, when vitamin C content peaks, preserving them whole or mashed into a thick paste that prevents scurvy through the long months when fresh greens are gone. This gathering is no longer simply opportunistic. It has become systematic, almost horticultural. Females return to the same productive patches year after year, sometimes clearing small areas of competing brush with fire or hand tools to encourage favored plants. They protect berry thickets from overbrowsing by erecting simple twig fences. They observe which trees produce the heaviest nut crops and mark them mentally for autumn visits. The knowledge is cumulative and shared. An elder female points out a stand of camas lilies whose bulbs were overlooked the previous year. A young mother learns exactly how long to leach acorn meal so it loses all bitterness without losing too much starch. This quiet cultivation of the landscape, never full agriculture, yet more than random collection, steadily increases the reliability of plant foods. In good years, it provides surplus that can be traded with neighboring groups for obsidian, shells, or copper ornaments. In poor years, it keeps starvation at bay longer than meat alone ever could. And still, the most profound female contribution remains reproduction itself, now supported by an even denser web of care. Births happen more often within the safety of the semi-permanent camp rather than on the trail. Midwives, usually older females who have delivered many times, attend each labor, using herbal infusions to ease pain, warm stones wrapped in hide to soothe the abdomen, gentle massage to reposition the infant if needed. Infant mortality, though still heartbreakingly high by modern standards, has begun to edge downward in these more stable settlements. A child who survives the first 2 years has a far better chance of reaching adulthood, thanks to the steady supply of soft, digestible foods prepared by female hands, mashed roots, fish broth, chewed meat passed mouth to the very young. Grandmothers and great-aunts play an even larger role here. Many live into their 50s and occasionally beyond, their teeth worn almost flat from years of softening hides and chewing tough sinew, their eyesight dimming but their memories razor sharp. They watch toddlers while mothers gather or process food, freeing younger women to contribute more calories to the group. They tell stories in the evenings, not just of hunts and plants, but of kinship rules, of which families can marry and which must avoid each other to prevent conflict, of how disputes were settled peacefully in the past. These narratives are survival tools as surely as any spear point or digging stick. A band that maintains clear social boundaries and low internal violence endures longer than one torn by constant strife. Let your attention rest now on a single ordinary day in this riverside camp during early autumn. The males have returned from a successful deer drive the previous evening, bringing 3 whole carcasses and several smaller kills. The meat is divided immediately, portions set aside for smoking, others for immediate roasting, bones cracked for marrow. The females have already prepared the day's base: large baskets of roasted wapato, piles of hazelnuts, flat cakes of leached acorn meal, a stew of smoked fish, and wild onions simmering in a watertight birch bark container heated with river stones. Everyone eats in small groups around the fires, sharing without tallying who brought what. A young male, proud of his first solo kill, passes strips of liver to his younger siblings. An older female tears small pieces of fish and places them in the mouth of a weaning toddler whose mother is busy scraping a fresh hide. As the afternoon sun slants lower, the females move to the processing area, a flat stretch of ground near the river where several large flat stones serve as work surfaces. They pound dried salmon into powder, mix it with dried berries and rendered fat, then pack the mixture into salmon skin pouches. This pemmican-like food will travel well on winter journeys or during lean months. Nearby, another group of females soften hides by stretching and scraping, then sew them into winter parkas using bone needles and sinew thread. The stitches are tight and even. A poorly sewn garment can mean frostbite or death when temperatures drop below freezing. The males, meanwhile, repair and improve tools. One sits cross-legged, pressure flaking a new projectile point from a core of high-quality chert traded from a group 2 valleys away. Another binds fresh sinew around the haft of a spear thrower, increasing its leverage so that even a lighter man can cast a dart with killing force. Boys hover nearby, imitating the motions, learning by watching rather than by lecture. The air fills with the rhythmic tap of stone on stone, the soft scrape of hide against scraper, the low murmur of conversation punctuated by occasional laughter when a child does something unexpectedly clever. As dusk arrives, the entire group gathers around the largest fire. Food is reheated, stories begin. A male recounts the deer drive in careful detail, how the wind shifted at the last moment, how one animal broke away only to be turned back by a well-timed shout, how the final arrow found its mark just behind the shoulder. A female adds her own account, not of the hunt itself, but of the day the group spent tracking a wounded deer the previous autumn, how she noticed the pattern of broken twigs and trampled ferns that led them to the carcass before scavengers claimed it. Both contributions are met with the same attentive silence, the same nods of understanding. When full darkness settles, the children curl against their mothers or aunts. The adults talk more quietly now, voices blending with the river's steady murmur and the soft pop of burning wood. Someone begins a low, repetitive song, not loud or dramatic, but soothing, a gentle repetition of syllables that has been sung in this valley for generations. The sound wraps around the camp like another layer of warmth. In this moment, the ancient question feels almost weightless. Male and female roles have grown more elaborate, more specialized, yet the interdependence has only deepened. The male's skill with bow and atlatl brings dense, high-quality calories that fuel brain development and long-distance travel. The female's mastery of plant processing, food preservation, midwifery, and social cohesion keeps the group alive through the intervals between hunts and through the vulnerable early years of every new generation. Remove either contribution for long and the entire system falters. Together they create resilience that no single individual, no matter how strong or knowledgeable, could achieve alone. Let the fire burn lower, let the song fade into silence, let your own thoughts drift with the smoke rising toward the stars. We have watched the partnership evolve from simple savanna foraging to this more complex riverside life, tools sharper, shelters sturdier, knowledge richer, yet the core truth remains unchanged. Survival was never a contest between male and female early humans. It was and remains a long, quiet collaboration etched into every bone, every tool, every shared meal, every surviving child. The river continues its slow journey to the sea. The night holds steady. There are still deeper layers ahead. The first deliberate burials with grave goods, the spread of trade networks carrying ideas as well as materials, the gradual emergence of larger seasonal gatherings where hundreds of people meet, exchange partners, exchange stories, exchange techniques. Those moments wait patiently in the darkness beyond this firelight. For now, rest. Let your breathing slow until it matches the gentle current of the river. The balance endures. The question has become less a question and more a recognition of something beautiful and ancient and unbreakable. Sleep comes softly here, carried on the same patient wind that has carried humanity forward since the beginning. Now let another cycle of seasons complete itself, so many that the forests have thickened again and the great ice sheets have pulled far back toward the poles. The world feels larger now, not because the land has grown, but because the people have learned to reach across it. Bands no longer live in complete isolation. Trails worn by countless feet connect valleys and river systems. Small groups meet at certain times of year, when salmon return, when herds pass through known corridors, when certain nut trees bear heavily, turning temporary camps into places of reunion. At these gatherings the air fills with voices speaking related but slightly different languages, with laughter, with the quiet exchange of goods and knowledge that will be carried home like seeds. Drift with me now to one such seasonal meeting place, a wide meadow beside a shallow ford where two rivers join. The grass is still green, though autumn colors are beginning to touch the maples and birches at the edges. Already several bands have arrived. Smoke from many fires rises in soft columns. Temporary shelters of hide and pole stand in loose circles. Children from different groups chase one another, inventing games on the spot. Adults move between fires, offering small gifts, a finely flaked knife here, a string of perforated shells there, a pouch of dried berries preserved with care. These exchanges are rarely about immediate need. They are about connection, about creating obligations of kindness that might be called upon years later when a band falls on hard times or needs safe passage through unfamiliar territory. In this larger social world, the differences between male and female roles begin to show new dimensions. The males, still the primary long-distance travelers when hunting or scouting, often serve as the first points of contact between groups. A hunting party from one band might encounter scouts from another far from any camp. The initial meeting is cautious, spears lowered but held ready, voices calm, gestures open. If trust is established, the visitors are brought back to the main gathering. Males from different bands compare spear points, demonstrate throwing techniques with atlatls, trade stories of particularly memorable hunts. Through these quiet demonstrations and shared meals, alliances form. A male who has proven himself reliable, sharing meat when his own group had plenty, guiding another band away from a flooded river crossing, earns a reputation that travels farther than his feet ever carry him. These networks of male-mediated trust sometimes prevent conflict before it begins. A band that knows it can call on distant kin for aid during a harsh winter is more likely to survive that winter. The females, however, often become the deeper anchors of these extended connections. When groups meet, it is frequently the women who recognize faces from years past, who remember which family helped during a sickness long ago, who know the kinship terms that determine who may marry whom without causing offense. A grandmother might approach an elder from another band, grasp her forearm gently, and speak in careful words about a daughter who came of age last spring and a young man from the visiting group whose family has no taboo against the match. These conversations happen away from the main fires, in quieter corners, often while sorting gathered foods or tending small children together. They are conducted with patience and memory rather than haste. Many of the most enduring inter-band marriages begin this way, not from sudden romance, but from the careful weaving of alliances that females maintain across years and sometimes across generations. Once a marriage is arranged, the female often moves to her partner's band, carrying with her not only her own skills but the knowledge of her birth group. A particular way of tanning hides that resists water better, a recipe for a root that eases stomach pains after eating unfamiliar plants, the precise timing for harvesting a certain berry before frost ruins it. She brings new genes, new techniques, new stories. In return, she learns the ways of her new home. Over time, these movements of females between groups create a web of genetic and cultural exchange far wider than any single male hunting range. Genetic studies of ancient remains from this period show that female lineages often traveled longer distances than male lineages, suggesting this pattern of female dispersal was already common. The males tended to stay closer to their birth bands, inheriting hunting territories and social status from fathers and uncles, while females moved outward, linking distant groups into a larger, more resilient network. Let your thoughts rest now on the consequences of this quiet pattern. A band struck by disease or a failed hunt might lose many members. If too many adult females die, the group's ability to gather reliable calories, care for the young, and preserve knowledge collapses quickly. If too many adult males die, the group may struggle for high-quality protein and fat, and its defense against predators or rival bands weakens. Yet because females often moved between groups, a band that lost many women could sometimes receive new ones through marriage alliances forged years earlier. A band short of hunters could call on related groups whose males remembered past kindnesses. These social safety nets, maintained largely through female memory and male reciprocity, allowed humanity to absorb shocks that would have broken smaller, more isolated groups. Picture the evening of the third day of this gathering. The sun has dropped behind the trees, painting the sky in soft rose and gold. Several large fires burn in the center of the meadow. People sit in loose rings, passing food from hand to hand. Roasted venison from a communal hunt earlier that day, flatbreads made from pounded cattail root and hazelnut meal, strings of smoked fish, bowls of boiled greens flavored with dried herbs. A male from one band stands and begins a slow, rhythmic chant describing a great hunt from many winters ago when his grandfather helped turn a stampeding herd away from thin ice. The visitors listen attentively, nodding when the story touches on familiar landmarks. When he finishes, an older female from another group rises. Her voice is softer but carries just as clearly. She tells of a winter long past when deep snow trapped her band for weeks, how a visiting woman from a distant valley taught them to make snowshoes from bent willow and rawhide webbing, allowing hunters to reach distant deer yards. She names the woman, now long dead, and the valley she came from. Heads turn toward a small group sitting near one fire. A middle-aged woman there smiles quietly, acknowledging the connection. The story is not boastful. It is simply shared, like food, like warmth. As night deepens, the singing begins in earnest, not loud, not frantic, but layered and gentle. Different bands add their own melodies, voices blending until the meadow seems wrapped in sound. Males drum softly on stretched hides or hollow logs. Females shake rattles made of deer hooves or dried seed pods. Children join in where they know the words, voices high and clear against the deeper tones of adults. The music is not performance. It is memory and promise woven together, a way of saying, we are here, we remember, we will help when needed. In these gatherings, the question of survival takes on yet another shade of meaning. Individual strength matters less than group resilience. A single male might be the strongest hunter in his valley, yet if his band has no allies when disaster strikes, his strength cannot save them all. A single female might know every plant within 20 miles, yet if too few children survive to carry her knowledge forward, it ends with her. Survival has become distributed across bodies, across memories, across distances bridged by trust. Males and females each contribute essential strands to this larger net, and neither strand can hold the weight alone. Let days pass. The gathering slowly disperses. Bands pack their belongings, hide bundles, baskets, new stone tools, small children tired from play, and begin the journeys home. Some travel together for a few days, sharing camps and stories before the paths diverge. Others part with quiet gestures, a hand placed on a shoulder, a small gift pressed into a palm, a promise to meet again next year if the salmon runs strong. The meadow empties. Wind moves through the grass where so many feet stood. The fires burn down to ash that will nourish next spring's growth. As we follow one returning band along a familiar trail, notice how the journey itself reveals the partnership once more. The males walk point and rear, watching for bear tracks or wolf signs, ready to defend if needed. The females walk in the center, carrying the heaviest loads of preserved food and new trade goods, keeping infants and toddlers close, soothing them when legs tire. When the group stops at midday to rest and eat, Males scout nearby for fresh water or possible game trails while females unpack small portions of the gathered and stored foods, ensuring everyone eats before continuing. At night they camp in known sheltered spots, males building quick windbreaks if necessary, females arranging sleeping places so the youngest are warmest, closest to the fire. Through every step the ancient balance persists. Males provide the forward vision, the protection at the edges, the occasional windfall of meat. Females provide the continuity, the stored calories that keep strength up during travel, the care that keeps children growing, the social memory that turns strangers into kin. Neither leads alone, neither follows alone. They move as one organism extended across many bodies. The trail eventually brings them home. The river glitters under late autumn light. The familiar huts wait, roofs newly patched with bark brought from the gathering. Smoke rises from rekindled hearths. Children run ahead, calling to the dogs left behind. Adults embrace those who stayed to guard the camp, the injured, the very old, the mothers with newborns too small to travel. Stories begin immediately, shared in low voices around fresh fires. New tools are examined, new foods are tasted. New names are spoken, potential spouses, potential allies, potential friends. In this homecoming, the deeper truth settles once more. Survival was never located in one sex or the other. It lived in the space between them, in the ways they fit together, in the ways their differences created something stronger than either could be alone. Through changing climates, through expanding social worlds, through the patient accumulation of technique and trust, the male early human and the female early human continued their long, quiet collaboration. The trail eventually brings them home. The river glitters under late autumn light. The familiar huts wait, roofs newly patched with bark brought from the gathering. Smoke rises from rekindled hearths. Children run ahead, calling to the dogs left behind. Adults embrace those who stayed to guard the camp, the injured, the very old, the mothers with newborns too small to travel. Stories begin immediately, shared in low voices around fresh fires. New tools are examined, new foods are tasted, new names are spoken, potential spouses, potential allies, potential friends. In this homecoming, the deeper truth settles once more. Survival was never located in one sex or the other. It lived in the space between them, in the ways they fit together, in the ways their differences created something stronger than either could be alone. Through changing climates, through expanding social worlds, through the patient accumulation of technique and trust, the male early human and the female early human continued their long, quiet collaboration. Let the fires burn low again. Let the river sing its unchanging song. Let your own thoughts grow still, sinking into the soft earth of deep time. We have watched the partnership stretch outward, linking band to band, valley to valley, memory to memory. There are still more layers waiting, times when art blooms on cave walls, when burials hold offerings of ochre and shell, when the first signs appear of deliberate care for the injured and the elderly beyond what necessity alone demands. Those chapters rest quietly ahead, for now rest. The night is calm. The stars return to their familiar places. The balance holds steady, gentle, and complete. Sleep comes like an old friend, carrying you forward on the same enduring current that has carried us all. Now let the years drift onward like mist over morning water, so many years that entire generations have lived and passed beneath the same circling sun and moon. The world has grown still richer in small, deliberate ways. Some groups have begun to shape the land more purposefully, not yet planting fields in rows, but encouraging the growth of wild stands of grain like grasses, clearing space around nut groves, burning patches of underbrush in late winter to bring forth tender new shoots that draw deer closer in spring. The huts have become sturdier, some lined inside with woven mats or plastered with clay mixed with grass to hold warmth longer. Storage pits lined with stones and bark hold dried fish, roasted nuts, ground seed cakes, smoked meat slabs, enough that a lean season no longer means the edge of starvation for everyone. Settle your mind now inside one of these more enduring settlements, perhaps 60 or 70 souls strong, built on a gentle rise overlooking a wide floodplain where the river braids into many channels each spring. The place has been occupied for many generations. The soil beneath the huts holds layers of ash from old hearths, fragments of broken tools, tiny beads of shell and bone. Paths radiate outward like the spokes of a wheel, one toward the best flint outcrop 2 days' walk away, another toward the sea where salt can be gathered, a third along the river where seasonal fish runs and waterfowl flocks arrive like clockwork. In this settled rhythm, the male and female contributions have each found new expressions, deeper roots, subtler interweavings. The males have become craftsmen as much as hunters. They spend long winter days inside the largest communal structure, a long, low building framed with massive posts and roofed with thick thatch, working stone, bone, antler, and wood into forms that are both useful and beautiful. One man sits cross-legged on a mat of woven rushes, holding a core of fine black flint between his knees. With a soft hammer of antler, he detaches long, thin blades, each one straight as an arrow shaft and sharp enough to shave hair from skin. These blades will become knives, scrapers, arrow points, awls. Another male nearby shapes a spear thrower hook from reindeer antler, carving delicate curves that increase throwing power while reducing weight. A third fits tiny barbed points of bone into slots along a harpoon shaft, binding them with sinew soaked in pine resin. These objects are not made in haste. Each takes hours, sometimes days. The men work in companionable quiet, occasionally pausing to pass a finished piece hand to hand, nodding approval at the balance, the edge, the symmetry. This craftsmanship is survival in another form. A better knife cuts hide faster and wastes less meat. A sharper arrow point penetrates deeper, killing more quickly and reducing the risk of a wounded animal escaping to die far away. A well-balanced atlatl throws farther and with less effort, allowing a hunter to stay outside the reach of horns or tusks. These refinements, born of male hands and male patience in the off-season, raise the odds of success on every hunt. They also create surplus, extra points and blades that can be carried to distant gatherings and traded for amber beads from the north, obsidian from volcanic lands far to the south, or rare pigments that make ochre brighter and black manganese darker. Yet the males' time indoors is balanced by their time outdoors. When the geese begin their southward flights or the salmon push upstream, the men leave again in small parties. They return days or weeks later with strings of birds, baskets of fish, or the quartered bodies of larger game carried on pole frames between two carriers. The arrival is never dramatic, no shouting, no triumphant gestures, just the quiet unloading of bounty at the edge of the settlement, the immediate sharing of fresh meat around every hearth. The children gather close, eyes wide at the sight of so much food. The elders nod slowly, remembering winters when no such bounty came. The females, in the meantime, have turned the settlement itself into a living storehouse of resilience. Their days follow a gentle, repeating cycle tied to the seasons and to the needs of growing children. In early spring, while the males are still repairing tools from winter wear, the women walk the floodplain edges collecting the first green shoots, nettles, wild garlic, young dandelion leaves, foods rich in vitamins that prevent the lassitude and bleeding gums that come from too many months of dried meat and roots. They boil these greens with fish bones saved from last autumn, creating broths that strengthen recovering bodies after winter. As summer deepens, they move into the gathering phase that has always been their domain, but now on a larger scale. Women and girls travel in parties of 8 or 10, baskets on backs or slung from forehead bands, infants riding high in slings. They know every productive patch within a day's walk. The reed beds where cattail pollen can be shaken into baskets to make flour, the hillside meadows where wild rye and barley like grasses drop heavy seed heads, the oak beech woods where hazelnuts and acorns litter the ground in autumn. They harvest with care, never stripping a patch completely, always leaving enough for seed and for birds and small mammals that in turn feed the foxes and wolves that keep the deer herds in check. Back at the settlement, the processing begins in earnest. Seeds are winnowed by tossing in shallow baskets, allowing wind to carry chaff away. Nuts are cracked on anvil stones, kernels dried on mats in the sun. Acorns are shelled, pounded in wooden mortars, leached in running water for days until bitterness disappears, then dried again into meal that bakes into dense, sustaining flatbreads on hot hearth stones. Fish from the river weirs are split, gutted, hung on racks over smoky fires built with alder and apple wood for flavor. Meat from larger kills is sliced thin, dried in the wind, sometimes pounded with fat and berries into portable pemmican that weighs little but carries enormous energy. This work is communal and constant. Women of all ages participate, young mothers nursing infants while they grind, older women whose hands move with the economy of long practice, girls learning by imitation. The air fills with the rhythmic thump of pestles, the soft scrape of scrapers, the crackle of fires. Conversation flows in low tones, memories of past seasons, observations about which patches yielded more this year, gentle corrections when a girl pounds too hard and bruises the seed. No one directs, the rhythm itself teaches, and through it all the care of the very young and the very old continues without pause. Infants are nursed on demand, passed from mother to aunt to grandmother when arms tire. Toddlers are watched by clusters of females while others work, given small digging sticks to play with, encouraged to mimic the motions of gathering. The elderly, more often female, still living into their late 50s or early 60s, are given places of honor near the warmest hearths. They shell nuts slowly, their weakened grip still useful. They tell stories to children gathered at their knees, stories that encode survival knowledge in memorable form. How a certain cloud shape warns of coming rain, how the call of one bird means a snake is near, how a particular combination of herbs eases fever after childbirth. One of the most profound signs of this deepening partnership appears in the treatment of those who can no longer contribute in the old ways. Archaeological traces from settlements of this period show individuals who survived severe injuries or illnesses that would have ended life quickly in earlier times. A male with a healed, shattered femur, bones realigned, callus formed strong enough to bear weight again, must have been carried, fed, protected for months. A female missing an arm from the shoulder down, yet living many years afterward, must have been given food, kept warm, included in the circle. These survivals required extra effort from the entire group. Males carried the injured on litters during moves. Females prepared softer foods, changed dressings of chewed leaves and honey, provided the steady nursing that allowed bodies to mend. The willingness to invest in the recovery of one individual, knowing the return might be small or delayed, speaks to a social fabric strong enough to absorb such costs. And that fabric was woven largely through the long-term bonds females maintained and the reciprocal trust males extended beyond immediate kin. Let an entire year pass in this settlement. Spring floods bring fish and fresh greens. Summer offers berries, roots, seed heads. Autumn delivers nuts, smoked meat, dried fish. Winter closes in with snow and cold winds, yet the storage pits and drying racks ensure no one goes hungry. The males hunt when weather allows, bringing in deer or boar whose hides become new clothing, whose bones become new tools. The females ration carefully, turning every scrap into broth or pemmican, keeping fires fed so the young and old stay warm. Through every season the interdependence remains visible in the smallest details. A male returns from a hunt with a fresh deer. The females immediately begin skinning and butchering, directing the division so lungs and liver go to the elders and growing children first, fat saved for winter lamps, sinew set aside for thread. A female finds a new stand of particularly sweet tubers. She shows the others, and soon the entire group knows the location, returning there year after year. A boy breaks his arm falling from a tree. Males splint it with straight branches and hide bindings. Females keep him fed and entertained with stories while the bone knits. As another spring arrives and the river rises once more, let your mind rest on this simple truth that has grown clearer with every turning of the wheel. Survival here is no longer just about who finds food or who fights danger. It is about who remembers, who prepares, who cares, who shares, who endures the long, quiet intervals between triumphs. Males and females have each become irreplaceable in their own domains, yet those domains overlap and support one another so completely that the line between them blurs into something seamless. The settlement breathes with life. Children laugh at the river's edge. Smoke curls upward carrying the scent of roasting fish. An elder female sings a low, wordless lullaby to a sleeping grandchild. A male sharpens a new blade, humming softly in time with her song. Let the day fade gently. Let the fires glow against the darkening sky. Let your own breathing deepen and slow, matching the pulse of this ancient place. We have watched the partnership grow roots, grow branches, grow flowers of care and skill that no single person could have cultivated alone. There are still horizons ahead, times when symbols become art that lasts thousands of years, when burials hold the first clear evidence of belief in something beyond the visible world, when groups grow larger still and new forms of leadership and cooperation emerge. Those layers wait in the soft darkness. The settlement breathes with life. Children laugh at the river's edge. Smoke curls upward carrying the scent of roasting fish. An elder female sings a low, wordless lullaby to a sleeping grandchild. A male sharpens a new blade, humming softly in time with her song. Let the day fade gently. Let the fires glow against the darkening sky. Let your own breathing deepen and slow, matching the pulse of this ancient place. We have watched the partnership grow roots, grow branches, grow flowers of care and skill that no single person could have cultivated alone. There are still horizons ahead, times when symbols become art that lasts thousands of years, when burials hold the first clear evidence of belief in something beyond the visible world, when groups grow larger still and new forms of leadership and cooperation emerge. Those layers wait in the soft darkness. For now, rest. The river flows on. The stars turn slowly overhead. The balance remains perfect, quiet, and whole. Sleep comes without effort, carrying you deeper into the long story that is still being told, one gentle breath at a time. Now let the light change once more, so softly that no single day marks the shift. Centuries slide past like water over rounded stones. The people have learned to read the land even more closely. Some groups stay longer in places where the soil holds moisture year-round and the game trails remain predictable. Others follow paths that now stretch across entire regions, linking river valleys to coastal plains, mountain foothills to inland lakes. In many settlements the hearths have grown permanent, surrounded by low walls of wattle and daub, roofs reinforced with layers of thatch and earth that keep rain out and warmth in. Storage becomes more ambitious, deep bell-shaped pits dug into the subsoil, lined with clay and baskets, sealed with flat stones and covered with soil so that mice and damp cannot reach the treasures inside. Settle now beside one of these more rooted communities, perhaps 80 or 90 people living where a clear spring rises from limestone and flows into a broad valley rich with game and edible plants. The place has been home for so many generations that the oldest remember their grandparents speaking of the same spring, the same oak grove on the ridge, the same bend in the river where otters play. Paths are worn deep into the earth, guiding feet from hut to hut, from spring to processing area, from settlement to the high meadows where wild grasses ripen in late summer. Here the male role has taken on new layers of responsibility tied to both protection and provision at greater scale. Hunting parties are larger now, sometimes 10 or 12 men moving together for days at a time. They track aurochs herds across open clearings or stalk red deer through dense hazel woods. The weapons have grown more lethal, composite bows with recurved limbs of yew and horn, backed with sinew for extra draw weight, arrows fletched with goose feathers and tipped with leaf-shaped points pressure flaked so finely they gleam in sunlight. These tools allow kills at longer range, reducing the need for close confrontation. Yet danger remains. A charging aurochs bull can cover ground faster than any man can run. A wounded boar can turn in an instant, tusks slashing upward. The males who return carry not only meat but scars, long-healed gashes across thighs, missing fingers from glancing blows, limps from falls on rocky slopes. Their bodies bear the record of risk accepted for the group. When they are not hunting, many males turn to tasks that secure the settlement itself. They fell young trees with stone axes hafted to wooden handles, split the trunks, shape posts for new structures or repairs. They dig clay from riverbanks, mix it with chopped grass and water, form it into bricks dried in the sun or fired in simple kilns of stacked stones. These bricks line storage pits or raise low walls that deflect wind and keep children from wandering too far. Some males become specialists in working the rare materials that arrive through trade. A core of volcanic glass carried from mountains far to the east, shaped into razor-sharp blades that cut hide as easily as a modern knife. Nodules of high-grade flint traded from coastal cliffs, napped into long dagger blades carried by those who walk farthest. These objects are more than tools. They are symbols of connection, of the ability to reach beyond the valley and return with something no one else possesses. The females, in parallel, have deepened their command over the steady, repeating cycles that sustain life through every season. Their knowledge now spans not just what grows where, but how to encourage more of it. In spring, they burn small patches of last year's dead grass on the floodplain, timing the fire so new growth appears exactly when the first kids and lambs are born and need tender forage. The fresh grass draws animals closer to the settlement, making short hunts more successful and reducing the distance males must travel. In summer, the women and girls tend stands of wild lentils and peas that grow in disturbed soil near old camp sites. They pull weeds by hand, thin crowded plants, leave the strongest to set seed for next year. They do not call this farming yet, it is still gathering, but the line has grown thin. The harvest is larger because of their attention. Processing has become almost industrial in its quiet efficiency. Large grinding slabs of sandstone sit in shaded work areas, worn smooth by generations of use. Females kneel before them, rocking heavy upper stones back and forth, turning barley like grains into coarse flour. Others pound nuts in deep wooden mortars carved from tree trunks, separating kernels from shells with sieves of woven willow. Still others tend drying racks, long poles strung between trees, where strips of meat, split fish, sliced roots, and braided herbs hang in the breeze. When rain threatens, the racks are moved under lean-to shelters or covered with hides. Nothing is wasted. Bones are boiled for broth until they soften, then cracked for marrow. Fat is rendered in clay pots set near coals, poured into hide containers for winter lamps, or mixed with dried berries for travel food. Every motion is practiced, economical, passed from hand to hand without words when words are not needed. The care network has grown denser still. More children survive the dangerous first years because females have refined the soft weaning foods, grain porridges thinned with bone broth, mashed berries mixed with chewed meat, nut pastes sweetened with honey gathered from wild hives. Infants are carried longer, nursed on demand even as toddlers begin to eat solids, ensuring steady growth even in seasons when large game is scarce. The elderly, now more numerous as life expectancy edges upward in stable settlements, are given places of quiet centrality. A grandmother whose eyesight has faded sits near the main hearth, sorting seeds by touch, separating good from bad with fingers that remember better than eyes ever could. An older male with stiffened joints no longer hunts far, but fashions cordage from nettle fibers or teaches boys the patience required to nap without wasting stone. Their presence is not charity, it is investment. Every story told, every small task completed keeps knowledge alive. One of the clearest signs of this deepening interdependence appears in the burials that now occur within or near the settlement. When someone dies, the body is prepared with care. Males dig the grave with antler picks and wooden shovels, lining it with hides or mats. Females wash the body with water from the sacred spring, dress it in the finest garments available, beads of deer incisor, perforated shells, strings of dyed seeds. Ochre is sprinkled over the form, red as blood, red as life returning to earth. Objects are placed beside the deceased. A favorite knife for a male hunter, a grinding stone and basket of seeds for a female gatherer, small toys or amulets for a child taken too soon. These burials are not hidden away. They lie close to the living spaces, under house floors or in small clusters just beyond the settlement edge. The living walk past them daily, remembering, honoring, drawing strength from the continuity. In one such grave, an older female rests with her hands crossed over her chest. Beside her lie two small grinding stones, a cache of hazelnuts still in their shells, a necklace of 20 perforated fox canines, and a tiny clay figure shaped like a woman with exaggerated hips and breasts. The grave is lined with layers of flowers gathered in the last days of her life, cornflowers, poppies, yarrow, petals preserved by the soil's gentle chemistry. Nearby, a male of similar age lies with a long flint dagger, 3 arrow points, a set of bone flutes, and a small pouch containing red ochre and black manganese. The objects speak of lives spent in service, hers to the steady feeding and healing of the group, his to the procurement and defense that allowed that feeding to continue. These burials mark a shift in thinking. Survival is no longer only about the living day to day. It is about being remembered, about passing something forward even after breath stops. The group that invests effort in proper farewell, in marking the place of rest, in placing objects that held meaning, is a group that values continuity above all. Males and females are buried with the tools of their domains because both domains were essential. Neither is diminished in death. Both are celebrated. Let seasons turn again in this valley settlement. Spring floods bring silt that enriches the soil and fish that leap in shallows. Summer ripens berries and grains under female care. Autumn fills storage pits with nuts, dried meat, smoked fish. Winter blankets the valley in snow, yet the fires burn steadily, fed by wood gathered and stacked by male hands in autumn. Children grow taller, elders grow quieter. New infants arrive, carried in the same slings their mothers once rode in. Through every change, the partnership remains the constant. Males venture out to bring in the unpredictable riches, meat, hides, rare stone, news from distant groups. Females transform those riches into security, food that lasts, clothing that warms, children who thrive, knowledge that endures. When a hard winter arrives and game disappears, the stored foods and preserved fat see the group through. When a sickness sweeps the valley, the herbal knowledge and nursing care of females keep more alive than would otherwise survive. When raiders or predators approach, the males stand at the edges with bows and spears, buying time for the rest to move to safety. No single hunt, no single harvest decides survival. It is the accumulation of small acts repeated across lifetimes, across generations. A male who teaches his son to track teaches survival. A female who shows her daughter which root eases fever teaches survival. A grandfather who tells of the great flood 20 winters ago teaches survival. A grandmother who remembers which families share blood and which must not marry teaches survival. As another spring unfolds and the valley turns green once more, let your mind rest on this gentle certainty that has grown clearer with every layer we have uncovered. The male early human and the female early human were never meant to be measured against each other. Their strengths were shaped by the same world, the same pressures, the same need to keep the fragile flame of humanity burning through endless nights. One provided the spark of sudden abundance and protection. The other provided the slow, steady fuel that kept the spark from going out. Together they created not just survival, but the possibility of something more: culture, memory, care that reaches beyond the self. The spring wind moves through new leaves, birds call from the oak grove, children run laughing toward the river with small baskets already learning to gather. An elder female sits in sunlight, sorting last autumn's seeds for planting. A male nearby binds fresh arrow shafts, humming the same tune she sang to her grandchild years ago. The spring wind moves through new leaves, birds call from the oak grove, children run laughing toward the river with small baskets already learning to gather. An elder female sits in sunlight, sorting last autumn's seeds for planting. A male nearby binds fresh arrow shafts, humming the same tune she sang to her grandchild years ago. Let the day continue without hurry. Let the valley breathe with you. Let your thoughts soften until they blend with the quiet pulse of this place. We have followed the partnership through savanna, steppe, forest edge, river valley, and now into this rooted, remembering life. There are still deeper currents ahead, moments when paint is brushed onto cave walls in patterns that speak without words, when flutes carved from bird bone play melodies under starlight, when the first signs of deliberate ceremony surround the dead and the living alike. Those stories wait in the calm darkness beyond the spring light. For now, rest. The river carries on its patient journey. The sky holds its ancient blue. The balance is not fragile. It is enduring, quiet, and complete. Sleep comes as naturally as evening, wrapping you gently in the same long continuity that has carried every human breath to this moment. Now let time fold forward again, gently, like pages turning in an old book no one has opened for centuries. The valley settlements have multiplied along the waterways. Some groups have grown into clusters of several hundred souls, connected by well-trodden paths and shared hunting grounds. The hearths are more numerous, the storage pits deeper, the walls higher. In certain places, the people have begun to mark the turning of seasons with small stone circles or wooden posts aligned to the path of the sun at solstice. These are not yet monuments in the grand sense, but quiet statements. We notice the sky, we count the years, we intend to stay. Drift with me now to one of these larger, more complex communities, nestled where a limestone ridge meets a fertile plain crossed by several clear streams. The settlement spreads across gentle slopes, perhaps 200 people living in clusters of round or rectangular houses built of timber frames, wattle walls plastered with clay, and steeply pitched thatch roofs sealed with moss and turf. Smoke rises from dozens of hearths at dawn and dusk. The air carries the mingled scents of wood smoke, drying herbs, baking flatbread, and the faint metallic tang of freshly knapped flint. In this setting, the male and female roles have each acquired new textures, new responsibilities, new ways of touching the invisible threads that hold the group together. The males have become not only hunters and craftsmen, but also keepers of certain long-distance knowledge. Small parties of 5 or 6 men now travel for weeks at a time, following established trade routes that stretch across regions. They carry surplus goods, finely worked arrowheads, strings of perforated deer teeth, small pots of red ochre mixed with animal fat, bundles of dried medicinal roots, and return with materials no single valley can provide: nodules of the best flint from distant chalk hills, amber beads from northern coasts, volcanic glass from far mountains, marine shells that shimmer with iridescent colors. These journeys are dangerous. Rivers must be forded in flood season. Wolves and bears patrol the empty stretches. Rival groups may guard access to prized resources. The males who undertake these treks develop a special kind of endurance, not the explosive power of the hunt, but the steady, day-after-day walking that covers hundreds of miles without collapse. Their legs grow lean and hard, their feet calloused into natural sandals, their eyes trained to spot distant smoke signals or the faint trail of a path worn by predecessors. When they return, the entire community gathers quietly at the edge of the settlement. Children run forward first, touching the new treasures with careful fingers. Adults follow, examining each item with low murmurs of appreciation. A male who has walked far and returned whole is greeted with the same calm respect given to a successful hunter. He has brought something that strengthens everyone: raw material for better tools, pigments for brighter markings, ornaments that carry stories of distant places. These exchanges are rarely one-for-one bargains. They are gifts given with the understanding that gifts will be returned in time, perhaps next year, perhaps in a generation. The males who maintain these networks become living bridges between settlements, carrying not only objects but news, songs, marriage possibilities, warnings of coming hardship. The females, meanwhile, have become the quiet architects of permanence within the settlement itself. Their work has grown more layered, more anticipatory. In spring, they walk the edges of the community's territory with digging sticks and small baskets, planting clusters of wild root crops in places where soil stays moist: arrowhead, cattail, burdock, knowing these will return larger next year. They encourage stands of nut trees by clearing competing brush and protecting saplings from browsing deer with simple fences of thorny branches. They select the strongest seed heads from wild grasses, scatter them deliberately in disturbed ground near old storage pits, creating patches that yield more each season. This is still not full agriculture, no plowed fields, no domesticated seeds, but it is active tending, a gentle steering of nature toward greater reliability. Inside the settlement, their domain is even more visible. Large communal work areas are shaded by woven reed mats stretched between posts. Here females of all ages gather daily. Some grind grain on querns of coarse sandstone, rocking the upper stone in slow circles until flour piles high. Others twist plant fibers into cordage, nettle, flax, lime, bast, then braid the cords into nets, bags, slings carrying bands. Still others shape clay collected from riverbanks, forming small pots, storage jars, lamps, figurines. These vessels are fired in open pits lined with hot coals and covered with turf. The resulting pottery is porous but sturdy, able to hold water, store grain, simmer stews over coals. A well-made pot can last for years, freeing hands from constant basket weaving and allowing more time for other tasks. The preparation of food has become an art of preservation and combination. Females dry meat and fish on racks raised high to keep flies away, then pounded into powder mixed with rendered fat and crushed berries or herbs for long-keeping pemmican. They ferment certain roots and fruits in sealed clay jars buried near springs, creating tangy, vitamin-rich stores that prevent scurvy through winter. They render fat from marrow bones and suet, storing it in hide bladders or small pots for lamps that burn steadily through long nights, providing light for winter storytelling and tool repair. Every technique is refined through shared observation. One woman notices that adding a certain dried leaf keeps stored nuts from going rancid. Another discovers that smoking fish over cherry wood gives it a flavor children prefer, encouraging them to eat more during lean times. The most profound layer of female contribution remains the web of care that now spans cradle to grave. More infants survive because mothers and grandmothers have learned to supplement breast milk earlier with soft mashes of grain and broth when milk alone is not enough. Children who fall ill are treated with infusions of willow bark for fever, yarrow for bleeding, chamomile for stomach pains, remedies passed mouth to ear across generations. The injured are nursed with patience, broken bones splinted with straight branches and wet hide that tightens as it dries, deep cuts packed with clean moss and honey, fevers cooled with wet cloths and constant attention. The elderly are fed first at every meal, given the softest portions, the warmest places by the hearth. Their stories are listened to with reverence because those stories are maps of survival, where to find water in drought, which mushrooms never to touch, how a certain wind pattern predicts snow deep enough to trap game in valleys. In this larger community, new forms of cooperation emerge, and males and females meet in shared spaces more often. At the center of the settlement lies an open area used for gatherings when the weather allows. Here, on clear evenings, people sit in wide circles. Males bring drums of stretched hide over hollow logs, beating slow, steady rhythms. Females add rattles of deer hooves or seed-filled gourds, layering softer sounds over the deeper pulse. Voices rise in song, not loud celebration, but low, repetitive chants that carry the names of ancestors, the paths of migrating herds, the locations of distant springs. Children join in, learning the melodies by heart. These gatherings are not mere entertainment. They reinforce belonging, remind everyone of shared history, renew the invisible contracts of mutual aid. Sometimes disputes arise over access to a favored hunting ground, over the division of traded goods, over a broken promise of marriage. In these moments, both males and females participate in resolution. Elder males speak first of precedent, of how similar conflicts were settled in the past without bloodshed. Elder females speak of kinship, of how anger between families weakens the whole group, of children who will suffer if trust breaks. Decisions are reached slowly, often through compromise, shared access to a resource for one season, a gift of extra meat to restore balance, a public acknowledgement of fault followed by shared food. Violence is rare, not because people are gentle by nature, but because survival depends on keeping the group intact. A feud that fractures the community can be as deadly as famine or disease. Let your mind rest now on one such evening circle under a sky thick with stars. The fire at the center burns low, casting warm light on faces lined by sun and wind and time. A young male has returned from a long journey with a small piece of amber the color of honey. He places it in the hands of an elder female whose daughter he wishes to court. The woman examines the gift quietly, then passes it to her daughter, who holds it to the firelight and smiles. No words are spoken at first. The gift itself speaks. I have walked far, I have remembered you, I offer something rare. The acceptance is equally quiet. The amber is tied into the young woman's hair with a cord braided by her mother. The circle murmurs approval. The drums resume, softer now, a rhythm that feels like breathing. In this moment, the ancient question of who survived best feels almost like a whisper from another world. Male and female roles have become so interwoven that separating them is like trying to separate warp from weft in a finished cloth. Males travel, trade, hunt, protect, craft the sharp edges that cut and pierce. Females tend, preserve, heal, remember, weave the steady fabric that holds everything together. Neither can claim primacy. A settlement without far-traveling males would lack rare materials and distant alliances. A settlement without deeply rooted females would lack the stored food, the healed bodies, the unbroken chain of knowledge that turns short-term abundance into long-term endurance. As the fire burns to embers and people drift toward their houses, let your thoughts settle with them. The night is cool but not cruel. Owls call from the ridge. A baby stirs and is soothed instantly by a mother's low hum. Somewhere an elder male sharpens a blade by feel, the soft scrape blending with cricket song. An elder female sorts the last of the day's herbs by touch, her fingers knowing each leaf's shape better than her eyes ever did. We have followed this collaboration through open plains and cold tundras, through seasonal migrations and rooted villages, through simple bands and larger, remembering communities. At every step the pattern holds, difference does not divide, it completes. The male early human carried the reach, the risk, the sudden windfall. The female early human carried the depth, the patience, the continuity. Together they carried humanity itself, across ice, across drought, across the slow turning of millennia. The settlement sleeps. Let your own breathing match the slow rise and fall of the sleeping valley. The night holds you gently. The balance is not a theory. It is a lived reality, etched into every tool, every song, every surviving child. Sleep comes without resistance, carrying you deeper into the same unbroken stream that has flowed since the first humans opened their eyes to the dawn. Now let more centuries accumulate, layer upon layer, like sediment settling at the bottom of a still lake. The communities have spread farther, some clustering into loose networks of allied settlements spaced a day's walk apart, others remaining solitary but linked by the long threads of trade and kinship. In certain sheltered valleys and along fertile river terraces, the houses stand closer together, forming what can only be described as small villages of several hundred souls. The architecture has grown more deliberate. Some structures are larger, with internal partitions of wattle screens creating separate sleeping areas for different families. Others have small annexes used as workshops or storage. Pathways between houses are swept clean, edged with low stones to keep mud from entering living spaces. In the center of many such places stands an open area used for communal activities, dancing when the moon is full, storytelling when the nights grow long, quiet meetings when important decisions must be made. Settle your thoughts now in one of these emerging villages, perhaps 300 people strong, built where two clear tributaries join to form a broader river. The limestone ridge behind the settlement provides shelter from northern winds and a steady supply of fine-grained flint. The floodplain in front offers rich soil renewed each spring by gentle floods, along with reed beds, fish-filled shallows, and grazing for wild cattle and horses. The village has occupied this spot for so many generations that the oldest trees near the houses show axe scars from long ago clearing, and the soil beneath the floors holds countless tiny fragments of pottery, bone beads, and charred seeds. In this more complex world, the male contribution has expanded into forms of coordination and specialized skill that reach beyond the single hunt or the single journey. Groups of males now organize hunts on a larger scale, 20 or 30 men moving together to drive herds of horses or aurochs into natural traps, narrow gorges, river bends, shallow lakes where animals cannot turn quickly. These communal drives require planning. Scouts go out days in advance to locate the herds, messengers run between hunting parties to coordinate timing, Beaters use drums and shouts to direct movement without panic. When the trap closes, arrows and javelins fly in carefully timed volleys so that no animal escapes wounded to suffer and draw predators to the village later. The return is staggering, sledges and pole frames piled high with carcasses, enough meat to feed the entire village for weeks and leave surplus for drying, smoking, and trade. These large hunts are not only about food, they are also displays of trust and coordination. A man who takes his place in the line, who follows signals without hesitation, who shares the kill equally even if his own arrow struck the killing blow, earns quiet respect that lasts years. Males who prove reliable in these moments often become informal leaders, not chiefs with absolute power, but men whose judgment others seek in matters of when to move camp, which route to take to avoid flooded ground, how to respond when strangers appear on the horizon. Their authority is soft, earned through repeated demonstrations of competence and fairness rather than force. At home, the males continue their craft work, now with greater specialization. Some devote most of their time to flint knapping, producing standardized blade cores that yield dozens of uniform tools with minimal waste. Others master the shaping of antler and bone into harpoons, fish hooks, needles, awls. A few work with rarer materials, copper nuggets found in stream beds or traded from distant highlands, hammering them into small awls, beads, and pendants using stone anvils and heat from the fire. These early metal objects are not yet tools in the modern sense. They are ornaments and prestige items, carried by those who have traveled far or contributed greatly to the group. The males who work them become known for their patience and precision, qualities as valuable as strength or speed. The females, in turn, have become stewards not only of daily sustenance, but of the village's long-term continuity. Their tending of wild plant patches has grown more intentional. They clear small areas each spring, burn the stubble to enrich the soil with ash, scatter selected seeds from the previous year's best plants. Plots of einkorn like wheat, barley like grasses, lentils and peas appear in favored spots near the houses, still wild, still gathered rather than planted in neat rows, yet noticeably more productive because of this care. The women know which plants respond best to burning, which prefer partial shade from nut trees, which thrive in the disturbed soil near old middens. They protect these plots from overgrazing by erecting temporary barriers of thorny branches and by timing harvests so enough seed remains for next year. Processing has reached new levels of efficiency and variety. Females operate large querns set in permanent frames, grinding grain into fine flour that bakes into lighter, more digestible flatbreads. They ferment mixtures of crushed grains and water in large clay vats, producing a mildly alcoholic porridge that preserves calories and adds flavor during monotonous winter meals. They dry fruits and berries on mats raised above the ground, then store them in sealed pots lined with leaves to keep insects away. They render fat in quantity, storing it in clay vessels buried in cool corners of storage pits where it keeps sweet for months. They brew herbal infusions not only for medicine, but for daily drinking: mint, chamomile, nettle, wild thyme, keeping hydration pleasant and adding trace nutrients. The care system has become almost institutional in its quiet way. A dedicated area near the central open space serves as a place for the sick and injured. Females with particular knowledge of plants and poultices take turns tending those who need constant attention. Brewing fever teas, changing dressings of honey-soaked moss, massaging cramped limbs, feeding those too weak to eat alone. Children born with difficulties, club feet, cleft palates, slow development, are not abandoned. They are carried, fed, included in the circle. Their mothers receive extra help from aunts and grandmothers, so the burden does not fall on one woman alone. The survival of these children, even when they cannot contribute fully later, becomes a measure of the group's strength. We are secure enough to keep everyone. Burials in this village are more elaborate still. Graves are dug deeper, sometimes lined with limestone slabs or river cobbles. Bodies are placed in flexed positions, knees drawn to chest as if returning to the womb of earth. Red ochre is dusted generously over the form, mixed with animal fat so it clings and preserves color. Grave goods are chosen with care. For a male hunter, a quiver of fine arrows, a polished stone axe, a necklace of bear claws. For a female gatherer midwife, several grinding stones of different sizes, a basket filled with dried medicinal herbs, a small clay figurine of a woman holding an infant. For an elder of either sex, objects that represent their lifetime contribution. A flute for one who sang the old songs, a set of bone beads for one who told the kinship stories. Some graves contain multiple individuals, perhaps a mother and child who died together, or an elder placed beside a grandchild, suggesting emotional bonds that transcended utility. Occasionally a burial stands apart. One such grave near the center of the village holds an adult female whose skeleton shows signs of lifelong high status. No heavy wear on joints from grinding or carrying, yet arms strong from other repeated motions, perhaps weaving or playing instruments. Beside her lie dozens of perforated shells arranged in patterns, a set of bird bone flutes, polished stone pendants, and small clay figures of animals and humans. The grave is covered with limestone slabs brought from the ridge, and the fill contains flowers and seeds that bloomed out of season. This woman was not a ruler in the modern sense, but her burial suggests she was central to the community's spiritual or social life. Perhaps a keeper of songs, a healer whose knowledge saved many, a grandmother whose memory held the village together through hard times. Let seasons cycle through this village. Spring brings floods that fertilize fields and fill fish weirs. Summer ripens tended patches and wild berries. Autumn fills storage pits to overflowing with grain, nuts, dried meat. Winter wraps the houses in snow, yet lamps burn inside with rendered fat. Children listen to stories by firelight. Elders are kept warm and fed. When sickness comes, the female healers work without pause. When raiders appear on the ridge, the males form a line with bows and spears at the ready, while others move the children and elderly to safety behind the houses. When a good hunt returns, the entire village eats well for weeks. Through every event, the interdependence is absolute. A male who brings copper from afar enables a female to make a better awl for piercing hide. A female who tends grain plots ensures steady calories that keep male hunters strong for long treks. An elder male who teaches boys to read animal tracks ensures future hunts succeed. An elder female who remembers which herb stops bleeding ensures injured hunters recover. The village thrives not because one sex excels, but because both excel in complementary ways, their strengths fitted together like the pieces of a well-made bow. As another winter night settles over the village, let your mind rest beside the central fire. Flames reflect on faces young and old. A male adds wood, careful not to send sparks towards sleeping children. A female stirs a pot of grain porridge flavored with dried apples. Somewhere a flute begins a slow melody, joined by soft voices. The sound drifts upward with the smoke, blending with the quiet hoot of an owl and the distant rush of the river. We have walked with them now through every major landscape and every major shift in living, from wandering bands to seasonal camps, from rooted villages to larger, remembering communities, from simple survival to a life touched by art, memory, ceremony, and deliberate care for the weak. At every step the same truth has held steady. The male early human and the female early human were never in competition. Their different bodies, different risks, different skills were shaped by the same world to serve the same end, the continuation of the group, the carrying forward of the fragile, precious line that leads to us. The village sleeps. Let the fire burn to glowing coals. Let your breathing slow until it matches the gentle pulse of this ancient place. The night is deep but kind. The stars keep their silent watch. The balance endures, quiet, complete, unbreakable. Sleep comes as softly as falling snow, carrying you deeper into the long, shared story that has never truly ended. Now let the final layers unfold slowly, like the last light of evening fading into a sky so clear the Milky Way seems close enough to touch. Time has carried us through every major shift the world has known, open savannas giving way to colder steppes, seasonal wanderings settling into rooted villages, simple bands growing into remembering communities linked by paths and promises. In these last quiet centuries before the great leap into full farming and cities, something profound begins to appear in the deepest shelters and most hidden places. Painted caves where the walls themselves seem to breathe with memory, burials lit by lamps that burned through long vigils, flutes of bone whose notes still echo faintly across millennia, and the first deliberate symbols that speak of a world beyond the one eyes can see. Drift with me now into one of these sacred places, a limestone cave tucked high in a river gorge where the entrance is narrow and the air inside stays cool and still year-round. The floor is soft with ancient dust and the faint crunch of broken animal bone from long-ago meals. Torchlight flickers from a small bundle of resin-soaked wood carried by careful hands. The light dances across walls that curve like the inside of a great womb, and there in the deepest chamber the paintings begin. The artists, most likely males who ventured into these dark spaces during times when the hunt was lean or the spirits needed to be reminded of their presence, used fingers, moss pads, and hollow bird bones to blow pigment across stone. Red ochre from distant riverbanks, black manganese ground fine, white calcite scraped from cave formations, yellow from limonite found in stream beds. They drew not for decoration, but for something deeper. Bison with curved horns and heaving flanks that seemed to move in the shifting light, horses galloping across the ceiling as if fleeing an unseen storm, aurochs standing massive and calm, their eyes catching the torch flame so they appear alive. Hand stencils appear beside them, outlines of open palms pressed to rock and blown over with pigment, leaving negative shapes that say, "I was here, we touched this place, our hands made this mark." Notice how these images are placed high on walls or deep in recesses where ordinary light never reaches. To create them required climbing, scaffolding of lashed branches, long periods in darkness broken only by the small glow of fat lamps. The work was physically demanding, requiring strength to hold position, steady hands to control the blown pigment, endurance to stay focused through hours of careful application. Yet the paintings are not crude. The lines flow with understanding of anatomy and motion, shoulders rounded correctly, legs bent in realistic stride, bellies swollen with the suggestion of pregnancy. This is knowledge gained from close observation during hunts, from dressing carcasses, from watching animals live and die. The males who made these images carried that knowledge into the cave and left it on the stone, perhaps as a way to ensure the herds would return, perhaps as a way to speak with forces they felt moving behind the visible world. Deeper still, inside chambers lit only by the dimmest lamps, other images appear, more abstract, more intimate. A female figure, hips wide and breasts full, stands beside abstract signs that may represent plants or flowing water. Another shows a human form with antlered head, arms raised, surrounded by smaller figures that could be children or spirits. These are not portraits. They are symbols, perhaps, of fertility, of the continuity of life, of the female body as the source from which the group flows. The hands that painted them may have been female, or perhaps males working in reverence for the life-giving power they witnessed every day in their mothers, sisters, wives, daughters. The division blurs here. The cave does not separate male from female contribution, it fuses them into something larger. Outside the caves, in the open air of the villages, burials now carry even clearer echoes of this fusion. Some graves are lit by small stone lamps filled with animal fat and a wick of twisted moss. These lamps burned during the preparation of the body, during the singing of farewell songs, during the slow lowering into earth. The wick would have been tended carefully so the light never went out until the grave was filled, hours, perhaps days of steady flame, who kept the lamps burning. Often the females, whose patient hands were accustomed to tending fires, to watching over the sick through long nights, to sitting with the dying until breath stopped. The light was not mere illumination. It was presence, it was care made visible, it was a promise that the departed would not go into darkness alone. In one such burial, an older male lies with his head resting on a pillow of folded hide. Beside him are placed a bow of yew, a quiver of arrows fletched with eagle feathers, a flint knife with a handle carved in the shape of a horse's head, and a small lamp whose wick has left a black stain on the stone dish. The lamp is empty now, but the mark remains. Nearby, a female of similar age rests in a grave lined with red ochre and flowers pressed flat by time. Her body is wrapped in a cloak sewn from many small furs, fox, marten hair, each pelt carefully tanned and joined. Beside her lie grinding stones worn smooth by generations, a basket containing dried seeds and medicinal roots, several clay figurines of women holding infants, and another lamp, its wick burned to nothing but still holding the shape of long vigil. The lamps in both graves speak the same language. We sat with you, we kept the light, we did not let darkness take you quickly. These acts of vigil, these gifts placed in earth, these paintings left in darkness, marked the moment when survival became something more than staying alive day to day. It became remembrance, meaning, continuity that reaches beyond any single life. And in every layer of that meaning, male and female hands worked together. Males painted the animals whose flesh fed the group and whose spirits were honored in cave depths. Females tended the lamps that burned through nights of mourning, shaped the figurines that represented life renewed, preserved the knowledge of plants that healed the body and soothed the mind. One carried the vision into darkness, the other carried the care into light. Neither could have done the work alone. Together they created a world where death itself was answered with beauty, with light, with memory. Let us walk one final time through an ordinary day in one of these late communities, when the first hints of full farming are already stirring in the tended plots, and the stored grain is measured not in handfuls but in baskets too heavy for one person to carry alone. Dawn arrives soft and golden. Males rise first in many houses, stirring embers and adding wood so the hearth warms quickly for children still sleeping. They check bows and spear points by the growing light, repair nets torn in yesterday's fishing, sharpen axes for clearing new ground. Some leave early for distant flint sources or to scout herd movements. Others stay closer, digging storage pits deeper or building low fences around the ripening grain patches. Females rise soon after, lifting infants to nurse while reaching for the first tasks. Grinding the last of yesterday's grain into flour, boiling water in clay pots for herbal tea, sorting dried roots and herbs for the day's meals and medicines. Older girls help carry water from the spring in large pots balanced on hips or heads, learning the steady gait that prevents spilling. Younger children are fed soft porridge flavored with dried berries, then sent to play near the houses under watchful eyes. As the sun climbs higher, the females move to the processing areas, kneeling at querns, pounding nuts, weaving new baskets from split willow, shaping clay vessels that will dry in the sun before firing. Their hands never stop moving, yet the motions are calm, rhythmic, soothing in their repetition. Midday brings shared meals around the central space. Males return from short hunts or field work carrying rabbits, fish, or bundles of firewood. Females add flatbreads baked that morning, stews of lentils and greens, roasted roots, small portions of smoked meat saved from last week. Everyone eats slowly, sharing stories of the morning, a deer seen at the forest edge, a new patch of wild peas discovered near the stream, a child who took first steps without falling. Laughter comes low and gentle, no one eats alone. Afternoon sees divergence again. Males climb the ridge to check snares or repair hunting blinds. Females gather in small parties to harvest from the tended plots, pulling roots, cutting seed heads, collecting herbs before they flower. Children follow, learning which plants to take whole and which to leave for seed. Grandmothers sit in shade, telling stories to the youngest, how the river once rose so high it carried away 2 houses but left fish stranded in the fields for weeks, how a certain star appearing low in spring means the salmon will soon run thick. The stories are survival maps wrapped in wonder. Evening brings the village together once more. Fires are fed higher, food is reheated, voices rise in song, slow, layered, repetitive. Males drum steady rhythms on hides stretched over logs. Females shake rattles and add higher harmonies. Children join where they know the words. The sound wraps the settlement like a blanket, holding everyone in the same quiet circle. As full darkness arrives and the youngest sleep against warm bodies, the adults talk in softer tones. A male speaks of the cave he visited last moon, describing the bison painted so vividly they seem to snort in the torchlight. A female adds that her grandmother once dreamed of such a bison standing over her bed, promising plenty if the group shared everything evenly. The stories blend male vision and female memory, hunt and hearth, darkness and light. In this final moment, under a sky that has watched every human generation, the ancient question dissolves completely. There never was a best survivor between male and female early humans. There was only the shared act of surviving, two kinds of strength, two kinds of endurance, two kinds of care fitted so perfectly together that the whole became far greater than any part. Males carried the reach into unknown places, the risk that sometimes brought sudden abundance, the marks left in deep caves as promises to the future. Females carried the depth that turned abundance into security, the patience that healed bodies and preserved knowledge, the lamps that burned through night so no one went into darkness alone. One without the other would have faltered long ago. Together they carried humanity through every hardship, every ice, every drought, every long empty night until the line reached us. The fire burns low to embers. The river sings its unchanging song. The stars wheel overhead in their ancient dance. Let your own breathing slow until it matches the quiet rhythm of this final evening. The story does not end here. It flows forward into every person listening, every child yet to be born, every hand that will one day touch stone or clay or another's skin and care. But for tonight, for this long, gentle telling, we have followed them all the way. The balance was never a contest. It was a harmony. It was love made practical across 300,000 years. It was survival itself. If this quiet journey through deep time has rested gently with you, please let us know in the comments where you are watching from tonight, your city, your room, the quiet corner of your home, and what time the clock shows as these words reach you. Share this moment with us, and if you would like more stories told in the same calm voice, more nights where history whispers rather than shouts, please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so the next one finds you when the world grows still again. Rest now. The night is kind, the long story continues in you. Sleep comes softly, carrying you forward on the same patient current that has carried us all since the beginning.